the Indian community is very polite and soft-spoken. But Israelis are like to the
No,
face, they have
exactly.
chutzpah, and I'm like, this is too much for me. I don't think I can do it. So they fled and they sailed and the shipwrecked near the western coast of India. That's how they entered India. And India being India, they were like, Yala, come be a part of our community. As crazy as it might sound, we never faced, at least I and my friends never faced any sort of anti-Semitism. There's a pattern. All the cybersecurity companies, the founders, they're all from the IDF.
Thank you so much for being here. I really am excited to talk to you today, find out all about you and your life and the life of Jews in India, which I have to say, I confess, I do not know much about, and it's a travesty, which is why you're here to educate us all down here in Australia, because we are so far away from everything. You know, it's almost like the rest of the world doesn't exist half the time. So thank you for connecting us to the world. I want to start just by asking you to introduce yourself a little bit and how you came to be where you are now in this online fight that we unfortunately find ourselves in yet again in Jewish history. So yeah, take it away.
For sure. Dahlia, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be talking about where I come from. And I completely agree with you. I mean, I also belong to the West, not like East. That's what I meant, and in the far East, and to be completely sometimes feeling like cut out from the rest of the world. But yeah, that's what I'm here for. My name is Revital Moses. I was born and brought up in India, in the Indian Jewish community. There are a couple of Indian Jewish communities. We'll talk about it more as we move further, but I belong to the Beni Israeli community, which is in Mumbai and Thane, like more to the west of India. I pretty much grew up there, did my schooling, my high school, even my MBA, and then I moved to Israel with my family. I made Aliyah, which is a term used for, let's say, leveling up your life by moving to Israel and following a more Jewish life in your own way, of course. And I mean, that's like the crux of like where I come from. I'm 30 years old, very much feel like an 18-year-old sometimes, but
Me
in my
too.
soul, I'm a 6-year-old. And to begin with, I mean, I come from a traditional Jewish community. So the Indian Jewish diaspora is pretty, let's say, spread out, but most of the concentration is in Mumbai, Thane, which is towards the west. We pretty much grew up, celebrating major holidays. I was very lucky to live by a synagogue. So I also like went for Shabbat, did all the major chagim, and my father was very active in the community as well. And then I was very well connected to the Jewish community, but also because I grew up in India, I had a lot more Hindu friends and like Indian friends from the community. Now, fast forward to moving to Israel, I saw that there wasn't enough Indian representation in Israel. And considering there's a population of 80,000 to 100,000 Indian Jews in Israel, I saw that there wasn't enough representation. And I was like, you know what, maybe it's time. And I also wanted to be a YouTuber. So I was like, you know what, I can combine these two things that I love most and start talking about it. That's how I started a channel called Moses in Israel, where I started to talk about the Indian Jewish connection. Yeah, that's how it started. I have to say, unlike my other friends who do hardcore advocacy, or like in Israel, we say hasbara, I focus more on soft advocacy, which is more to do with culture, language, people, food, because I feel like that's equally important. Because when people talk about Israel or associate Israel, they think of, let's say, war or violence or anti-Semitism. And I feel like we're more than that. And also coming from India, because the culture is so strong, I feel like the Jewish culture is also very strong. There's just very few people throwing spotlight on it. And that's how I came to be doing soft advocacy for India and Israel. That's how it started.
So when you say you grew up traditional, can you just explain what exactly that means for you? Because I know that there are so many terms in the Jewish world, depending where you are, that are used to sort of describe a level of religiosity or a way that you grew up. And I don't know if traditional, like say how they use it in America, which is sort of maybe more associated with like reform, Judaism. I don't know if that's the same in India or it means something else.
For sure. So there, I think in terms of religiosity, most of the community is traditional. And what I mean by that is when we go to the synagogue, the men and women sit separately. And there is a male rabbi. We've never had a woman rabbi lead prayers. At least like, well, when I was growing up, but I did hear like now there is somebody from America who did lead prayers in India. And then also like in terms of, let's say, again, like it really depends from family to family. So my father preferred kosher food, but my mother was okay.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what? I don't get butter chicken. Like if I would follow kosher, like I would miss out on butter chicken. So it really depended on family to family. And of course, there are very specific Indian Jewish traditions that we had to follow. We can talk about it more. Like the Malida ceremony, and for Shabbat, we would add 2 additional prayers, one for Ha'etz and one for Ha'adama, because we believe the more bracha you do, the more mitzvah
The more
it is.
blessings, yeah.
Yes. So we added 2 additional blessings after Kiddush and before Chala. So yeah.
So do a lot of Indian families do that?
Yes, it's very unique to the Beni Israeli community. I mean, there are a couple of other Indian Jewish communities, but this is very unique to the community that I come from. And I had friends who were more religious, like they wouldn't use their phone on Shabbat. Like I would, because I was a hustler and I wanted to make use of all my 7 days. So I would. Although now that I have to say now, I feel like I'm taking more time on the weekends to rest. I try not to touch my phone, just because for my mental peace,
It's better for you, yeah.
Yeah.
It's healthier to be away. Definitely.
For sure.
Yeah.
And of course, like with growing with the number of apps and like decreasing attention span, I feel like I need to. But that's the reason, and not because like I feel like I want to. My way of Jewish life is very different from my other friends, and like we respect it's very like you do yours and I'll do mine, and hakol beseder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was pretty much it. But again, like it depends from family to family. So if the first, like, for example, if my father would eat kosher, we wouldn't get non-kosher food at home because he was following kosher, and then we would just go out and eat non-kosher food.
So was your home kosher as well, or was it just?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It was, but then some of my friends then have kosher. What do you say, kosher homes, and I would still go and chill with them and like have dinner at that place. So it really depends from person to person.
Yeah.
My father wouldn't wear a kippah at all times. He would only wear a kippah when he was going to the synagogue, or if he had a bar mitzvah ceremony, something like that. It was very specific. So yeah.
It sounds, I mean, pretty close to what modern Orthodox would be in Australia.
Oh, really?
Maybe slightly less. But within modern Orthodox, which is how I grew up and the school that I went to, you sort of have that diversity of there are those that are a little bit more strict than others. But generally, you have a kosher home, you keep Shabbat, you go to synagogue on Shabbat, and you wear a kippah. But a lot of modern Orthodox Jews will eat in not necessarily kosher restaurants, but they'll be vegetarian when they eat out and things like that. So
I'll be
it
honest, I only
sounds like
found
that,
out
yeah.
when I moved to Israel because I was exposed to a lot more communities and from people from all around the world. For me, it was like, okay, like follow as per na na na. But I think in Israel, it's like there are a lot of like sections. You could be from, you could be Haredim, you could be secular. And I'm like, I think that's a bit too much. You know, you follow like the way you want. I'm still getting used to it. So, yes.
Yeah. So when did you move to Israel? How old were you when your family decided to move? Or was it just you? Or was it your whole family?
So we moved as a family,
Mm.
and it was in the COVID year 2020.
Oh,
Perfect
tough
timing.
times. Yeah.
It was a hard decision because life in India is very comfortable. It's very nice to us considering Jews around the world are facing so many problems.
Mm.
We were considered as one of the Indian communities, very well taken care of, very well respected. So it's very hard for us to leave India and come here. Reason being, I was 25 at the time. I have a younger sibling who was 16 or 17, I don't remember, but she's 8.5 years younger to me. Do the math. And my parents said it'd probably be easier for us to move as a family because we are quite close. We wouldn't want to stay in different countries. Also, like life is too short. You want to be around family.
Yeah.
And they said, like, you guys are young, you can adapt quickly. If it works, great, we can stay there. If it doesn't, we can always come back. I personally did not want to move because I came on Taglit in 2016 and I promised myself that I was never making Aliyah. Well, never say never.
Okay. That's a very strong reaction. Yeah.
Because the thing is, I loved here to be a tourist, but I was like, if I was to live here as an Israeli, I'm not sure I can do that. The Indian and the Israeli cultures are very similar, but they're very different in a lot of ways. Like, for example, the Indian community is very polite and soft-spoken.
Mm.
But Israelis are like to the
No,
face, they have
exactly.
chutzpah, and I'm like, this is too much for me. I don't think I can do it.
Yeah. I think it's too much
So
for a lot of people. It's hard.
yeah,
You have to get used
absolutely.
to it. Yeah.
So it's been 5 years and I'm still getting used to it.
Mm.
Although my Indian friends say I'm too Israeli and my Israeli friends say I'm too Indian. So I don't know
Okay.
where do I fit exactly, but I think that's every Olim's challenge to be
Hmm.
fitting because everybody wants to put you in a box, but you can't when you come from a different country and different
Yeah.
culture. You
Well,
know,
on this show, you don't need a box. That's what the show is about. The dignity of
perfect.
difference. You just do your own thing.
Yeah.
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 So I want to understand a bit more about the life of Jews in India and maybe if you know a bit about the history and the story of the Jews in India and how they ended up there, what
For sure.
happened, how long they've been there, what it's like.
For sure.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of Indian communities in India, but I'm specifically going to talk about my community, which is the Beni Israeli community, which is also the biggest community now in India. And when I say biggest, it's like just 4,000 Jews left out of the 1.4 billion in India. But
Wow.
that's significantly big compared to the other communities, because let's say the Kochini Jews, which is like down south, I think there are like maybe just like a few families left. Or Bene Ephraim, I think maybe like, again, like a couple of families. Baghdadi Jews, they contributed the most, but they ended up moving to, I think, London, and like most of them also went to Singapore. So when I say biggest, it's like just 4,000. So my ancestors, the story goes, they traveled from the land of Judea back in the day, like years ago, because of all the persecution. So they fled and they sailed and the shipwreck near the western coast of India. That's how
Hmm.
they entered India. And India being India, they were like, Yala, come be a part of our community. And it's
That's
very
cool.
inclusive. That's how my ancestors ended up settling in India and never left.
Mm-hmm.
My ancestors settled in a village called Nagao. There's still a synagogue and a cemetery there. And of course, eventually over the years, they moved to Mumbai and Thane, where it was more commercial, more opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And let me say, our community, like as crazy as it might sound, we never faced, at least I and my friends never faced any sort of anti-Semitism. Of course, we have other challenges, but this wasn't a challenge for us. The
Mm.
Indian community embraced us like our own. They made us a part of their community, gave us opportunities, job, invited us to their festivals, and we invited them to ours. So it was pretty much like we we kind of like, I want to say there was of course like assimilation as well, but like it was a pretty smooth transition
Mm-hmm.
from being thrown out to being embraced.
Mm.
And
So
then of
what?
course like
Yeah.
yes.
No, no, go on, go on.
And of course like over the years we had like the Jewish people build Jewish schools, hospitals, libraries, synagogues. Like I said, I was lucky to be living 5 minutes away from the synagogue in my city.
Yeah, you're very
That
lucky.
was pretty much like the history of my ancestors and my community. And in terms of challenges, I would say there are, like I said, different challenges. So for us, like it's more like assimilation because the community is so small. It's hard to find a Jewish partner.
Mm. That's true. That's
And
true.
then over time, because I think there aren't like a lot of Jewish schools compared to other private schools, so people just ended up going to private schools because the locations were better, and then people just eventually like moved out. So that was one
Are there
number.
any Jewish schools in
Yes,
India?
my mother went to a Jewish school actually.
Mm.
My mother and all her siblings, they went to a Jewish school. But the the thing is now there are hardly any Jewish students in that school.
Mm. Is that because people are sending their kids to other schools, or there's just not enough kids, Jewish kids,
There aren't like
anymore?
enough Jewish students, and I mean that school particularly is just not. It's not like just for Jewish children. It's because it's India. It's like open for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Most schools are like that. It doesn't matter which religion or caste or creed you come from. Um, you're allowed to go to the school if you live in that area, because I think the school system is like if you live by the area, it's just easier for the child to commute. Now
Yeah.
I was lucky I went to a private school, but it wasn't Jewish school. It was just like a private school in my city.
Mm-hmm.
But my parents made sure that I also got my Jewish education.
Mm-hmm.
So we had like a Jewish Sunday school that I went to. It was called Gan Katan, and my sister also like followed after me. And then we would, of course, like learn about Jewish holidays, different communities. We would like do celebrate Purim and like have the seder. So like at least my parents ensured like their kids have the Jewish education and follow the traditions that our ancestors kept and followed.
Mm.
Oh, and the other challenge I was going to talk about was that unlike the Western diaspora, the Jewish diaspora, I feel like in India specifically, I don't know how it is in Australia, but I feel like we don't get enough opportunities to work with Jewish organizations, volunteer for Jewish camps. I mean, we have like two organizations, but that's about it. And when I had the opportunity to fly to the US, there are so many organizations, countless. And you could like volunteer and go on a, what do you say, like a gap program to Israel. I'm like, whoa, I want that. I feel like we don't have enough exposure like the Jewish diaspora in the West. This is what I
Mm.
think.
Yeah, we do have quite a few Jewish organizations here, but mostly in Melbourne and Sydney. So if you're
I see.
a Jew in Perth or in Queensland or in outside of Melbourne, Sydney, generally the
Mhm.
Jewish communities are pretty tiny, so there's
I
not
see.
much going on there. Yeah, so but if you're here, there's plenty to do. For me, in year 11 and year 12, our school camps were called Zionist camps, Um,
Ooh.
there you go, right? You know, it's built into our DNA. Um, and on Zionist camp is run, usually we have six shluchim from Israel that are in our school. Every year there's six new ones, three guys, three girls. And instead of doing army service, they go to another country and advocate for Israel and, you know, teach the kids in the school, Jewish kids, about Israel, and they put on events for Yom Ha'atzmaut or whatever it is. And they run the Zionist camps every year, and those were the best school camps ever. My favorite school camps were Zionist camps. I'm putting it out there. Zionist
I
camps are
want
the
to go to
best.
one.
Yeah, no, they were. Yeah, it was really great. Yeah. Anyway, back to life in India. So you said you didn't really experience any sort of anti-Semitism or anything growing up. That's pretty amazing. I mean, I can see why you might not have wanted to leave.
Yeah. And also, like, let me put it this way. A lot of people were curious. A lot of people, even today, don't know, like where did the Jewish community come from?
Mm,
And like, why are we there in the first place? Or like, some people don't even know who Jews are.
yeah.
But ever since I've started my YouTube channel, a lot more people are starting to know. And they're like, oh my gosh, why did you leave? Come back. We need more Jews in our country. I definitely get asked a lot of questions about my roots, about my traditions, just like you asked me, but also like the Indian community themselves, like have
Mm,
so many questions. What do you guys eat? Who do you pray? Like, whom do you pray to? What's your place of prayer? Like, can you take us there? Can you
mm.
invite us to like one of your Hanukkah nights? So many questions.
That's amazing. I mean, I wish more people were like that. I mean, personally, I've also, in my life, most of my non-Jewish friends that I've had, like at uni or wherever, have always been like that. They've always been very curious, always asking me questions. Even at uni, I was part of a group of sort of mentoring international students. And so you had people from all over the world. I was one of the only Jews. Actually, I think I was the only Jew in the club at that time. So you had a lot of people from Malaysia and Hong Kong and Korea and a lot of Asian countries and a lot of
Mhm.
Indian students and Pakistani students and from all over the place. And I even had like Muslim friends who we'd compare our food because they were halal and I was kosher, and we'd be like, "Oh, I can't eat this," and she'd be like, "Oh yeah, me too. Oh, that's so cool. We're like the same," you know.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so those kind of interactions are amazing. So you said there were a lot of similarities and differences. Well, you said between Israeli and Indian culture, but I'm sure there must be
Yeah.
even in Jewish and Indian culture. Like, what are some of the similarities and differences you found growing up in India, but as a Jewish Indian girl at the time?
So I'll start with the similarities. I think both communities are very much focused on like community aspect, praying for the community, going out of your way to like help a person who's in need, focus on education, focus on marriage, focus on having kids, focus on passing down tradition to your kids and making sure, because the roots are very important to both cultures, is what I think. um Also, like when it comes to alliances, like especially after October 7th, there was so much balagan, of course, going around the world, but I very clearly remember like the Hindu community like stood up out front and they're like, we are with you because we understand what you're going through.
Yes.
We did have a lot of terrorist attacks happen in India as well, and they're
Mm.
like, we know what you're going through,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody was kind of was against us, with everything that was going on,
Yeah.
all the misinformation, and especially on X or Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. There's so many Indian personalities. They're like, no, 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 no. We are with you. Like, and like, do what's right for you. We are here, like, by your side. So that's something that's very similar. when it comes to differences, like I mentioned before, India is like in general, like it's very soft. It's very polite. Also, like let's say if I dislike somebody, I'm not gonna like go up front say like, hey, nah, but just politely, you know, not you won't. It's not like out and about in your face. Whereas in Israel, it's like, hey, I did not like the way you said it, or like whatever. Like it's very like to your face, and sometimes I really struggle because I'm like I'm trying to strike a balance, but I just don't know where to draw a line sometimes.
So
uh,
would you say that was
yeah.
the biggest culture shock for you then when you moved to Israel?
Is that was definitely like one of the most what do you say evident differences. Of course, like the second one, the thing is like I grew up Jewish in India. Now we don't believe in idol worship, but the Hindu community does. So again, like striking a balance between like showing harmony, like hey, because I used to get invited to a lot of festivals that had idols in their homes,
Yeah.
but I don't want to be rude, like because it was like mutual, na. So I made sure like I attended those festivals, but like if there was if there was, let's say, an action of bowing down, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
I would just stand there.
exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
had to see what works for me and also make sure like I maintain solidarity with my Indian friends. So that was like definitely different in terms of like worship. Also, I know like we as Jews, we're allowed to eat beef. Now, the community worships cow.
Yeah.
So for me, growing up in India, I know I was allowed to eat, but we never ate beef. So when I moved to Israel, everybody's like having steaks and kebabs, and I'm like, I don't think I can have it. Like I'm too Indian to have beef. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
like I know I'm like it's not I'm allowed to eat, but because culturally I grew up in India, it
Yeah.
just felt wrong.
So do you eat beef now
I've
or
tried a
still
couple
no?
of times, but I'm still not very comfortable. My parents won't touch it like at all. I think it's also very generational. The older you are, the harder it is to break those patterns. So my parents don't touch. They also like get very giddy when they smell something. I'm like, you know what? I want to try. I'm a millennial. I'll just go for it. But I now I've actually decreased eating non-vegetarian food. I'm trying to focus more on vegetarian because that works for my body. And my sister, who's Gen Z, she's like, I like my meat. Okay, good for you. So it really depends, you know, what generation you belong to. It's a personal choice.
Yeah.
That was also like really major. Coming to food, okay, again, it's very interesting because a lot of people come from the West. They feel like Israeli food is spicy. And I'm like, no, it's not, because I come from India.
Yeah, sure.
And I still feel like it's so bland sometimes. And then I have other friends, like their nose is running and there's like
Yeah, that would
air
be
coming
me.
in their ears. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, no. But it's interesting because now I've developed a sense of taste for Middle Eastern food. I visited India a couple of months ago and I can't have spicy food anymore.
Wow. It only took 5 years to get there or
Yes.
whatever.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my identity.
Yeah, no, I would be the person. I can't even have pepper. I'm that white. It's sad, really sad.
Gosh. And then of course, like I developed like lactose intolerant in Israel. Like I can't process dairy for some reason. So now I'm Ashkenazi.
Oh yeah, welcome to the tribe. The other side of the joys of,
I
um,
grew up in dairy. You know, you have paneer and you have ghee and you have lassi and you have, you know, all of the dairy delicious stuff. And then you move
yeah.
to India. I believe the dairy here is more processed than India. So my
Oh,
body,
interesting.
for some
Okay.
reason, can't process it and I just can't have dairy anymore.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's probably better for you in the long term, but yeah,
I believe so.
better for your skin.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, so you moved to Israel with your family, and what? were you doing at that time when you first came to Israel with your life, in life?
So the thing is like back in India, I'll give you like a little bit of context because then you'll understand. So I pursued my MBA and then I decided to dance full time because that was my passion. So I completed my MBA. Otherwise, I was going to disappoint my parents, which I don't think I would have because I wanted to be a good Indian daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished my MBA, but in my second year, I was pursuing full-time MBA and dancing full-time. So it was like 8 hours of studying and then 8 hours of dancing. Then I completed my degree and then switched to dancing full-time. And I was like, you know what? I want to be a choreographer. What do you say? Choreograph for Bollywood movies, Hollywood movies, also like maybe perform at Broadway, something like that. I wanted to be a performer. I knew I wanted to dance. And
What
of
kind of
course, like
dance? What kind of dance were you doing?
so I started with an Indian classical dance form. That's called Bharatanatyam. Let's say it's equivalent to ballet of India because it's
Okay.
to do with posture,
Mm-hmm.
class, elegance, but the Indian style.
Mm-hmm.
So I did like 8 years of Bharatanatyam. I also like got a degree, but the Western styles were more cool for like I found them more cool and I felt like it would suit my personality. So I started training in hip hop and dance hall. So I did that for a while during my MBA, and then I think I was trained enough to like start assisting choreographers in commercial shoots for advertisements in movies and stuff like that.
Fun.
And then of course, like we made Aliyah, and then I didn't foresee it happened during the COVID year. I mean, we didn't plan to do it during COVID. It just happened. Like we landed in Israel, and 4 days later, we were in our first lockdown.
Wow.
So everything shut down, and my hopes just crashed because I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Also, like leaving hard was India. So I'm like, in addition to that now, I also have to lose my dancing because I can't be in public spaces anymore. I can't go
Mm.
out networking. So to be honest, the only thing I was doing was learning Hebrew. It's a part of your Aliyah process. When you come here, and if you enroll in let's say, in an absorption center, a Mirkas Klita, you have 5 months
Mm.
of intense Hebrew training. It's like 5 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Does everyone do that, or is it a voluntary thing?
It's optional. Some people
Okay.
opt for a private one. This is funded by the government. I would highly recommend doing it through the government because you don't have to pay.
Yeah.
And everything is, yeah, especially in the first 6 months, it's taken care of.
Mm. Cool.
And they try and help you like land smoothly. For me, it wasn't a smooth landing, I have to say. I was emotionally struggling a lot. But yeah, I did like 5 months of Hebrew training, and then I decided to do level two, which is like the tougher level. Like there are levels. Of course, in India, like we pray in Hebrew, but we don't converse. So it's hard for me to pick up a new language. My brain isn't meant for new languages whatsoever. But anyway, I'm like, if you want to live in this country or at least like get through it till COVID ends, I need to learn some basic Hebrew. So that's what I was doing. Also, the
Mm-hmm.
hard part was like you usually have classes in person because of COVID, everything was moved to
Online.
onto Zoom. And I
Mm.
was like, oh my gosh, like I'm like stuck, cooped up in this room, and then I'm just like learning Hebrew. I can be social. I'm missing Indian food, my friends, and everybody's in the same situation, because COVID happened like to everybody at the same time. Of course, it happened in phases, but it was a tough time. So that happened. And then I took up level two, and then I ended up taking up a job at a kindergarten because I'm like, oh, if I need to live in this country, which is so expensive, one of the most expensive countries to live in, I need to get a job and start supporting myself. So that's what I started to do. And then eventually I made more friends. Like things started to open up. Israel was one of the first countries to open up the lockdowns, and people could just go out and start socializing in limited capacity, of course. But that's what I did. Wow, this was like 5 years ago almost. Still gives me chills when I think about it. It wasn't
Yeah.
what do you say, a nice experience, a pleasant experience at all, but I'm still here.
We're all still here. Yeah.
but that was what my life looked like. And then of course I was like, I gave up on dancing completely. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to work out. I need to shift my focus. I was like, I could do marketing, social media. And then on the side, I also started vlogging my life on YouTube. That's how it started. So because I'd done enough YouTube stuff, I felt like I had experience to show people that I could do social media. And I gained my first job as a social media manager for a company. And that was like my first official job. Let's say like a nice job in Israel.
Yeah.
And
So,
then rest is history, yeah.
yeah. So was your YouTube channel Moses in Israel, or is that something that you created later?
So no, I named it Moses in Israel because a couple of reasons. Like my last name is Moses, so I was like, oh, it's apt. Also, like the OG Moses never made it to Israel. I was like, you know what?
It's true.
Yalla,
See,
like
the only Moses that made it there.
yeah. And I was like,
Yeah.
yalla, like it would be fun to show the cultural blend between like India and Israel. And also, like if you know, like it goes back to his story when he runs away, when he acts like when he kills somebody and he runs away out of guilt, and then there's a tribe that accepts him without any questions, and he becomes and that's where he finds his wife, in the desert,
Yeah.
he becomes a shepherd. So I consider that tribe as India. Exactly like, my ancestors fled and they took them in as one of their own. That was one of the reasons why I also named Moses in Israel. It's very significant for me. And yeah, I mean, it's just like I started like doing one video after another. I wasn't thinking. I was just like going with the flow. And then I found my purpose was to bridge the gap between India and Israel, because these are like two ancient civilizations. And I felt like, oh, I was born Jewish in India. Like how, like I felt like I was the person who could do it. It was a calling. That's how I started.
So have you had a largely positive response then from like the Israeli and the Indian communities to your content?
For sure. Oh my gosh. Like a lot of my friends, like they're like, how do you manage it? Because we get so much hate. I'm not saying all of them, but if you're a Jew by default, you get hate because of, but for me, for some reason, actually, I know the reason why. I do like, let's say I do get hate comments. It's not like I don't get hate comments at all, but 80% of my comments are positive. And they're like, "You're doing such good work," or "You need to come back to India. We need more Jews contributing to the community and building the Indian economy." It's because like a lot of my ancestors, let's say the Indian Jews contributed to the community. So they have so much respect for us. And also like they know what we went through. It's more like trauma bonding.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do receive a lot of love. And with the current scenario, I feel like there is so much potential between both countries to collaborate, especially, I know like in terms of defense and agriculture, there's so many collaborations already. But in terms of business, I think it's going to be the next phase of alliance for both countries. And of course, culture. I feel like Israelis, they go to India after their army service, but most of them don't even know there's a Jewish community in India for some reason. And in the Indian community, they know Israel for, of course, like our IDF and defense and cyber tech, but they're like, I'm sure there's more to this country. Like, where's the culture? And a lot more about the culture. And I'm like one of the only people who's trying to cover culture. So they're like, wow, that's amazing. And there's somebody who looks like them, talks two of their languages, so they kind of connect to like who's on camera and what they're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
that's why it works.
So tell me then how Israel tech fits into that in your life, because that's obviously not necessarily about culture. It's yeah. Tell me a bit about what Israel Tech is and what you are doing as part of that.
For sure. So Israel Tech is actually okay. So Moses in Israel is my passion project. Israel Tech is my full-time job that helps me pays my bills. But Israel Tech, I mean, the reason is like there's a mission behind Israel Tech. We interview CEOs, VCs, and founders of the tech ecosystem in Israel to be able to serve the information to the world. Because feel like we are best in terms of technology. We were labeled as startup nation for a reason.
Yeah.
But people have no idea why, because so much content, like whatever content is available is all in Hebrew. So we are trying to make that information available in English so that people know. Of course, we want wealthy individuals and investors to be able to invest in Israeli companies.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And of course, like it's kind of like hasbara or advocacy, but for the tech ecosystem. So it also like fits in well with Moses as well because that's more cultural. This is more tech. So I understand what it means. Just like there is different forms of content for different personalities,
Yeah.
different audiences, but it has the same goal, like advocacy for Israel, bringing in more visibility, education, yeah, and supporting Israel, especially after October 7th.
Are there a lot of young Israelis that are getting involved in tech and startups now, even more so after October 7th?
For
Or,
sure.
yeah.
So so I've been working for the company for about a little more than a year now, and with the people we've interviewed, like there's a pattern. All the cybersecurity companies, the founders, they're all from the IDF.
Okay.
So because they have so much experience from the IDF, they want to be able to apply it and to be able to give back to the community.
Yeah.
And most co-founders, they usually meet in the army, they become best friends, and they're like, Yalla, let's start a company. And that's how they start a tech company in Israel. That's mostly the pattern. Of course, there are olim or like immigrants who start companies of their own, but let's say most of them come from the IDF. Or let's say defense. Yeah.
So would you say that your role there is more sort of like a spokesperson, a face of the organization?
I am definitely not the face. My boss is. I do co-host sometimes, I have to say. I'm more
well,
on
you're featured in a lot of their videos.
definitely. He definitely does like a lot more. Like he has more screen time, and I feel like I believe he's perfect for it. He has a personality, he has the knowledge. I'm more on creating content, ideation. I'm more to do with creating the content than being on camera. And I also enjoy it that way because I do enjoy translating the content that I make into like the editing and then showing it to the audience. That's more like my job. Although like eventually I would love to be more on camera. But again, like when you're building a company, you're kind of like doing so many things. Sometimes you don't have the bandwidth to, be on camera sometimes. So right now I'm more behind the camera, behind the scenes, doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
But I'm sure like eventually I'll be more on camera, hoping for the best.
So I want to take it back to the culture side of things. Is there a favorite Indian Jewish tradition that you have that in Israel, being surrounded by so many other Jewish groups, that other people don't understand or they're curious about that they don't do?
For sure. So again, this tradition is very unique to the Beni Israeli community, like my community. It's called the Malida ceremony. So, okay, so let me explain what Malida is. So Malida is basically like a plate or like a bowl of flattened rice. We also call it poha. You soak it in water and then you mix it with sugar and dry fruits and flaked coconuts. It's like the best thing ever. But like how did Malida come into existence in the first place is that like back in the day when Jews came to India, there are a lot of, because India is so community oriented, there were a lot of interfaith community programs that used to happen. And most of the population back then was vegetarian. Of course, you can't take beef to the community gathering. So my ancestors came up with a vegetarian dish, which is Malida. Like the Hindus would get, or the let's say the Maharashtrian or the local community would get Puran Pori, which was more like, I don't know if you know, but like roti or chapati filled with jaggery. Then there was a Muslim community that would get sheer kurma, which is like condensed milk with save or like vermicelli, like they call it in English.
Yeah.
And then the Jewish community came up with Malida. So that way you could be a part of the gathering. It's also vegetarian. And also like eventually it started being a part of like the ceremony became a part of an auspicious day. For example, if there was a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, we would do a Malida ceremony before the actual events. To start off an auspicious event, we do a Malida ceremony. We call everybody, there's a rabbi, and then we pray to Prophet Elijah, or we call him Eliyahu Hanavi. And that's how we do it. So if there's a wedding in the house, or if you're buying a new house, or even for Shabbat, or any of the fun, auspicious events, we hold a Malida ceremony with the community, and then we start off the main events. So that's the Malida ceremony.
Wow. So, so that ceremony, is it just the prayers that you say, or is it more? So, just take me through exactly what would happen. Like if I went to a Malida, if I went to a Malida ceremony, what would that look like?
Wow. So Malida ceremony is like, of course, like you have the rabbi and you have the members of the community or the family that's hosting the Malida ceremony. And it's as simple as like the just prayers, you sing songs, and of course we add the ha'etz and the ha'adama, which is the banana and the dates.
Yeah.
And of course, like there's wine involved, and there's a big feast, and you also have food after the ceremony. So it's
right.
It's as simple as like prayers, but you also sing, and like it's like a happy occasion. And there's of course there's food involved, so everybody's just like, oh wow, there's like delicious food. But it always takes me back to my childhood, because whenever there was a Malida ceremony, like all the aunties and the uncles would just pack extra Malida for me so that I could just take it home and then enjoy it, like for the next 2 days.
Yeah, wow. Sounds great. Next time I'm in a Jewish community in India.
I want to film one. I would love to film a Malida ceremony video. I just not had the opportunity to do that, but hopefully soon.
Are there a lot of Indian Jewish communities in Israel?
Yeah, so right now the numbers are anywhere between 80,000 to 100,000 in Israel, but they're like, again, the concentration is like either like up north. I think mostly it's down south, like Ashdod, Beersheba, Dimona. That's more like the area where the Indian community is. But but again, it depends on the generation. A lot of our generation, like millennials, Gen Z, they want to be in Tel Aviv, and like, they want to be in the city and like have fun and be a part of the Anglo, the international community.
So what are, if any, are some of the challenges that the Jewish communities in India face at the moment? I mean, it sounds like they have a pretty good life there, but I'm sure there are always issues and things that can be improved.
No, for sure. So, okay. I think assimilation is one major challenge. So like, because the community is so small, you can't find Jewish partners. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people do want to find Jewish partners, so it's hard. And some of them, they're like, we don't care, it's fine. It's fine to have non-Jewish partners. That's like, I respect that. That's not a problem. But I mean, if you want the community to thrive and like take the generation or the customs ahead, I feel like it's always good to have Jewish partners. Also, like in terms of culture, it's better. It's easier when your partner understands where you come from, what your traditions are like.
Yeah.
So I think assimilation is like one of the major challenges. Second is finding kosher food. Now, again, like I was lucky to live in an area where we had a shochet and the synagogue. So my father would manage to get, kosher meat. And when we say meat in India, it's mostly goat or lamb.
So you would get meat locally then?
Yes, which is kosher. But again, not everybody has that privilege in India, because again, like if you live in a Jewish area, it's easier, if not so much.
Yeah.
That's second. And the third, like I mentioned before, like I feel like we feel a bit more cut off than the Western diaspora. I feel like we don't have a lot of access to Jewish camps and like volunteering opportunities. It's limited. I feel like we could have more. And then nobody really speaks in Hebrew.
Mm.
Like we speak in local languages, in English, of course, but like nobody really converses in Hebrew. So when we're making Aliyah, it's like it's hard because I mean we know the alphabets and we know a few words, but that's about it. And if you want to live in this country and thrive, you need to have at least like two levels of Hebrew, which we don't, absolutely don't in India. What else? I think those are like our main challenges, of course. I'm trying to think if there are any. Because I know like my other friends from other countries have different challenges altogether. But I think for India, like this is it. Ooh, yeah. So when it comes to, let's say, Yom Kippur or like Purim, we need to like go and like here in Israel, by default, you have a holiday. It's in your calendar. You know what I mean? In
Yeah.
India, like they never said no, but we had to like always go and ask for it. It's always like constantly educating your colleagues and your friends where you come from, and it's exhausting sometimes. You don't want to explain. Like I feel like have had to explain myself all my life, first to the Indian community and now to the community who lives here, because they have no idea who Indian Jews are whatsoever. Of course, I made peace with it, and now it's my purpose in life to educate people.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took a while because sometimes like I don't want to explain myself. I just want to do it. So I think I felt that a lot growing up. I just felt like constantly had to like explain. People like my father used to enjoy. Now for me, it really depends. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I want people to understand where I come from.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that's the reality of living in the diaspora, which is
Mhm.
why Israel is such a unique experience. It's the only place that you don't have to really think about that for Jews
Mhm.
in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that's why we have a lot of, like in Australia, why we have our own schools
Mhm.
and Jewish establishments, and people tend to like to work for Jewish organizations so that they don't have to, it's already built in to the organization that you're working for. If you have an Indian song or a Jewish Hindu song, I don't know what exists. I'd love to be able to play it at the end of our episode on air, and maybe you
Mhm.
can tell me what the song is and why you chose it.
Okay.
And yeah.
So I was trying to find something that was meaningful, but I'm gonna go for something that's funny
Okay.
because a lot of the Israeli audiences grew up with this Indian song for some
Mm-hmm.
reason. It's not even that popular in India, but they grew up with this song for some reason, and it's so like it's strongly associated with India. And a lot of my Indian friends do get annoyed. They're like, "Why did they pick this song out of all the billion songs we have in India?"
Yeah.
But I asked my friends and they said like it's catchy, it's fun, you can dance to it, you can do all the light bulb steps, the stereotypical Bollywood steps that they see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll send you the song, but it's called it's a song from a movies back in the 90s. I just hope my Indian friends don't um I hope they don't strongly feel about my recommendation.
It's okay.
But
We can have a whole conversation after,
yes, but this is
If
the
they have
song that Israeli.
suggestions, I'm
For sure.
open
Maybe
to it.
I can
Yeah.
send you a few. I do have a few, but this song should definitely play. This is the song. If you ask an Israeli, which
Mm-hmm.
song do you know? This is the song they're going to sing.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Um, well, thank you so much. Where can people find you online if they want to check out your stuff?
For sure. So I'm most active on YouTube. That's where my main audience is. It's called Moses in Israel. And if you were to like write the handle, it's Indian in Israel. But you can also find me on Instagram by the same name, Moses in Israel, or also Revital Moses. I
Mm-hmm.
recently got active on X because I feel like my audience is also there. So I'm trying to explore this new
Mm-hmm.
platform that's like, I think, perfect for the Israeli audiences because it's so to the point.
Yep, and
So also
everything's
find
allowed. Yeah.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. So you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, on X by the name of Revital Moses or Moses in Israel.